right now, he is State Senator Dr. John Bizon. Good morning to you, Senator.
Good morning, Tim. It is so great to be with you this morning. Thank you.
Seems like last time we talked, you were just a state representative. Well, I don't want to say just a state representative, but it was a different job, kind of. Now it's, well, sort of
A
the
little
same.
bit more responsibility this time.
Yeah.
As a representative, we typically represent about 93,000 Michigan citizens. As a senator, the number is somewhere in the range of 270,000 to 300,000 people.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The districts. And
kind of 3 times as many.
Yes, and the area to get around is nearly 4 times the area because a lot of the new district is going to be not as urban as the last, more rural, more spread out, and so land-wise, a much bigger district.
Sure, and it's the 19th, right?
It is the 19th.
So that incorporates some of Ionia
and all of Berry and all of Ionia and all of Calhoun. Whereas before I had half of Calhoun, I had basically the northern half of Calhoun. Now I have all of Calhoun, all of Berry, and all of Ionia.
I suppose it changes kind of how you operate your office, but maybe not necessarily your overall, political view and goals. I mean, there's, when it comes to auto insurance reform or road repair, it's kind of the same thing.
A lot of issues, you have to do what's right for our citizens, and that doesn't necessarily change with district boundaries. It's very important that we represent our district, but it's also very important. And we were chosen to represent this area for all of the citizens of the state of Michigan. And so, yes, we try to do what is good, not only for our area, but also for the state of Michigan. And I think that's something that everyone on both sides of the aisle will strive for.
So obviously you had to pack up all the family pictures and box them up and take them off somewhere else because you got a different office. And what about your staff, your office? Tell us how all that's looking right now.
Well, I was very fortunate in my staffing. I'm one of the few people up there who actually has a lawyer on staff, and besides having one, I have 2 lawyers on staff, 2 young gentlemen who have JD degrees, and I'm looking forward to both of them. Both of them have some very strong ties to the political process, but also to the legislative process. Jake Jelsma is a gentleman who came with me in the middle of last, maybe a year and a half ago, and we were together through the last election. We were together through the last portion of the last session, and so he knows a lot of the history of where we have been. Karen, who was in my old office, Karen Todd, is going to continue to be with me as well, and she has just great ties to this community. She is involved, as her husband Terrace, are involved with a lot of the different activities here and know a lot of the different people, and it's been a blessing having her as well. There is another gentleman who is going to be joining me by the name of David Biswas, and he was the chief of staff to the majority floor leader last session, so he knows all about bills and how to write them, how to run them, and he's been just great. I consider him a blessing as well. The 4th person in our office, because the office is expanded with the increased number of constituents, with the increased area, we have just a huge number of meetings to cover, and we just can't get to all of them. So we try to have our staff go to many of the meetings in various areas for us as well. And we have a brand new scheduler by the name
Ben McLeod?
Ben McLeod.
He's a Penfield boy, right?
Yes, he is. He's right from here. And so, again, he's got great ties. He is in the process of graduating from Western Michigan University. He has ties to the state party, and I think that for this community, he's going to do just a excellent job.
Well, he's in good position then to run your constituent cases and direct affairs and communications, which is, as you know, a very big part of being any elected representative. Some representatives, they kind of do that part of the job. They're more about trying to do the bigger, what do I want to say, philosophical, or
the big arguments
yeah,
rather than
those kind of things. But
getting in
you
the
got to
dirt.
do everything, though.
We really do. You have to have the big discussions, as we are going to have on road funding, as we are going to have on auto no fault, as well as civil asset forfeiture, which is the one bill that had already been taken up by the House and the Senate.
Excuse me.
We are going to be discussing road funding, although a lot of my colleagues say perhaps we need to wait a year or two until we hit the full stride of what we've been doing. From a personal standpoint, I think we've had this discussion before, where I would argue that we need to find an innovative way to do our roads. We need roads to last more than 2 years when we pay so much to put them down.
Well, and I think we also need to find a way to do them sooner than later, because the costs just balloon the longer we wait. And we got a lot of these municipalities that just feel they can't afford to get it done, and then all of a sudden it's cost 10 times what it would have cost.
I know that I'm in the process of putting together a meeting with our county commissioners and the Barry County Road Commission, because it said that the Barry County Road Commission does it very well. And up in Barry County, you'll find that certain of the secondary roads have been turned back into gravel roads or dirt roads. They have the major byways that are all paved, and many people would argue they're paved pretty nicely, but if they don't have the dollars to afford every road getting asphalted that nicely, then perhaps we need to make a decision as to which ones need to be turned into those secondary roads. And
that's going to get some pretty hotly contested public meetings if all of a sudden your road that you have to travel every day is going to get turned to dirt.
But the benefit is that it's very, very cheap to maintain.
Yeah.
And then you'll have money for the roads that you want to have maintained. The pot of money is only so big, and at times you need to find better ways of doing things and think outside the box. And if our listeners have ideas as to how we can do that, I know that I was at one of the meetings where they were talking about heating the roads, and that would keep the roads from expanding and contracting during the winter months, and you wouldn't have to salt the roads, you wouldn't have to necessarily plow the roads. And the question becomes, is this viable? Is that going to save us money in the long run? And I don't know if anyone has seriously looked at that issue.
Well, and also you spend more money washing your car, but you spend a lot less replacing struts and rims and other repairs that you might have for a road that just is always in a state of disrepair. And this time of year doesn't matter much. A dirt road, a paved road, they're very similar.
Very similar at this point in time, and people oftentimes argue that if you don't have that great big pothole, that it perhaps is even a little bit safer.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about the asset forfeiture. That's kind of the first thing that's being action taken. Some people think that even though it's been a great tool for law enforcement, that we may have gone too far with asset forfeiture. So what do you think? What's your position on this, and what's being talked about in Lansing?
Well, there is always the due process clause that needs to be followed. And, if we empower our agencies to take assets from private individuals without even charging them for anything, the question becomes, is that fair? Is that legal? And the law makes it legal, but is the law just? And it's something that we are going to have to look at closely. I know that the law enforcement community very much supports it, but then again, they very much benefit from this particular action, because I believe they can keep many of the
seized
seized assets, yes, and sometimes government can seize just about everything you own. The question becomes, is that fair? And there are a lot of people who are saying perhaps it isn't. And the chair of our Judiciary Committee, I believe, is Pete Lucido, and it was his bill that is running, and we'll see. I'm tempted to say that there has to be due process at some point. You just can't take things from private individuals because someone said that they may be related to illicit activities.
We're talking with State Senator Dr. John Bizon, who's moved over from the State House to the State Senate, and things are going to be a little different this time around. We have a Democrat elected governor, and how will that affect how you guys do your job in Lansing?
I think both the Democrats and the Republicans want the same thing for Michigan. You know, we want to have a prosperous economy. We want to have a place that is good for our families and our business. And so our goals are not different. The approaches to the goals seem to be somewhat different, though. And so there's going to be that discussion. I think that there will be some give and take. I'm expecting some quick wins out the gate. I anticipate that out of the block, we're going to find areas where we can get together and say, yes, we agree, let's move the ball here. Oftentimes, our priorities are manifest in the budget process, and oftentimes you put your money where the budget priorities are. And we may have some differences with the governor on that, and we are fortunate, and the legislature appropriates, and the governor is going to regulate, is going to administrate. As far as a projection, in the past, it's always been that budget process that had held up and even closed down government on a couple different occasions in the past years. Our current governor, Gretchen Whitmer, has significantly greater legislative experience than Jennifer Granholm had, which was the last time we had the divided government. And so I anticipate that that process is going to be a little bit smoother. I anticipate that there will be some bumps. Yesterday I had a meeting with the lieutenant governor, and we were talking about our priorities, his and mine, and there were things that I felt that he could support, and he spoke of things that I thought that I could support. And so I do think that we're going to see some differences, and we're going to have to discuss how we're going to get this done. But it's a process, and the entire legislative
a good point, though, Dr. Bizon, that not really since John Engler have we had a governor that actually served in the state legislature and kind of understands how it all works. That's got to help, and hopefully we'll be able to get some things done. First and foremost, the state auto insurance law, the no-fault law. Do you expect we'll come to any agreement and get any relief for Michigan drivers in that area?
There are ongoing discussions in both chambers. On the Senate side, we formed a special committee to specifically handle that, headed up by Eric Nesbitt, who is a state senator now, just from an area north of us, a little bit to the west of us. And I think that he's going to be instrumental in trying to put this together. Right now, he is going around to the various senators to see where they are sitting on the auto no-fault issue, trying to learn more about it. I know that he and I had a discussion yesterday as well. And I think that there are certain areas that are important to me to see revised and improved. And this isn't going to be reform, but I think there's going to be that concentration on how can we make it affordable for the citizens of this state. And in my mind, you need to look at what benefits you're giving up and at what price. Right now, we have some of the highest premiums in the state. I shouldn't say in the state, but in the United States.
Right.
But we also have the very best benefits of anyone in the country. And the question becomes, how much are we willing to give up away from those best benefits in order to make things more affordable, and do we even have to? The question becomes, if we take out the fraud, if we take out those who are taking advantage of the system, can we have a 40, 50, 60% decrease in our premiums if we operate the system differently? Are the initial values of auto no fault, where it was we will cover everyone, we will have prompt treatment and rehabilitation, and we'll get the lawyers out of the system. Can we get back to those ideals? And there's going to be discussion along those lines.
Well, let's hope we have more to talk about on that issue by the time we talk next month. Briefly, Senator Bizon, what committee assignments do you have in your first term as senator?
Well, they have kept me largely on the appropriations side of the aisle. They're going to be putting me on the general approps, and that's a honor to be with a relatively small group who are going to be doing the statewide appropriations. They also have me on various subcommittees where I am vice chairing not only public policy, but also the healthcare appropriations, or the HHS, and that's a huge part of the budget. That is some $24 billion, of which 18.5 is through the Medicaid funding of this state. They're going to have me on capital outlay, and that is the general improvement to the state of Michigan overall, a very important committee in my mind. And they also put me on university and community colleges. They're having me chair a combination of two prior committees. There used to be a separate Veterans Committee from the Family and Seniors Committee. The Family and Seniors Committee is much of the old HHS committee, apart from the healthcare portion. So they'll be having me chair that portion, as well as the portion on veterans. And so I anticipate I'll be relatively busy.
I guess so.
Especially given the fact that my colleagues have asked me to be the assistant majority whip in the chamber. So I'll be in part responsible for finding out where other of my members are in the caucus regarding the bills that are coming through, and making sure that we know where they stand prior to the bill going up on the board. So it'll involve a lot of communication with my members, and I'm very much looking forward to that.
And we look forward to talking to you more about it next month. State Senator Dr. John Bizon, thanks for joining us this morning.
Oh, it's great always being with you. Thank you so much, Tim.